John Wallace here. Got a little information for you. Let's start with my hat. That's a Cold War veteran hat. See that National Defense Service Medal? You get that for service during times of war. The other one's an overseas ribbon. The overseas ribbon, sometimes it's like the Air Force or the Navy, while they're flying around over the sea in an airplane, and sometimes it's an airman or a soldier or a marine or somebody who got on an airplane and went over the sea to get to their overseas location, which is on the ground. So you can do ground combat or be a avionics technician on an air base or something, or provide security on a base or something like that. For the Navy, and the Navy SEALs sometimes overseas, it's also underseas. We get on that submarine who takes us underseas to our overseas location. It's somewhat of a misnomer to be overseas when you went underseas to get there, but that's something that you wouldn't probably understand unless you're actually in the submarine service, and some people in the submarine service have not pondered that thought, but need to mull it over for a second. This is a little information. I don't know if you follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook for the last 6 months, a year, you notice a few ciphers. This is account number 1528886, and you can get a cipher out of there. When you do simple cipher, you might get like 15. That would be like O for officer, and 28. You can do 28 mod 26, which is divide 28 by 26 and take the remainder, and whatever the remainder is your number. So your number is 2. So it starts with a 2 and it's a 2, so you can say 2-2, and that could be black boats or big boats. A submarine is definitely a big boat at almost a football field long. And then it could be the H's for the hull or something, or the hydrogen bombs that are on there. Then you got the 88. So 88 could be 88 mod 26 is 10. Is 78 is 26 times 3, right? So 10 plus 78 is 88, which is 10, which is J. And then the next number is 6, which could be 6 for F for forces, right? Or 6 for SEAL Team 6. There are also some other things you can extract from something like that. What you look for when you're doing a cipher is to see how many related extractions you can make. Because with one number, you could get one letter. With 2, you could get 2 letters, and then it's a 2-digit number, so it's going to be somewhere between 10 and 99, right? So you could get any of the representations of either that number between 10 and 26 or 27 and 99 mod 26, which gives you another number, and it's going to be, that number would be 0 to 25, where 0 is no remainder, meaning it's a Z, and 25 is the remainder of 25, which is Y. It's counterintuitive. You say 51, you divide by 26, the remainder is 25, that's Y. Some people hit a 28 mod 26, they get a 2 and say it's a B, right? Well, it is, but it's 2 is a B and 28 is a B. They get confused. There's other ways to get confused with these things, but let's start out with a simple one. Let's work backwards. We just skip the 6, and it's 88 mod 26 is 10 is J. That could be justice. It could be Japan. It could be joint. And then 82 mod 26 is 4, which is D. And so you could get JD, which is Juris Doctor, right? And so he's got yeah. Said so who's got Juris Doctor, and then 51, and 51 is EA, and EA is executive agency, right? You see how that works? 5 is E, 1 is A. 82 mod 26 is 26 times 3 is 78. 82 minus 78 is 4, right? So the remainder is 4, which is D. So you get Juris Doctor if you want, and 51 you get EA for executive agency, right? So what is a Juris Doctor related to the executive agency? Well, a lot of station chiefs are lawyers, right? And if you could get station chief or CIA or something out of it, you might have something going on, right? Well, anyways, you get 451, you could get DEA out of that, or Fahrenheit 451, which is, the 6 is Fahrenheit, right? And that's what it began with. And 451 DEA begins with justice, so that's kind of a diversion, the book. But you can get 45 instead of 451. You get 45 is 19, and 1 is 1. That gives you SA, which is special agent, and some of those lawyers can be special agents if they need to at CIA. They work counterintelligence, they just grab a badge and go arrest somebody in the embassy with some MPs or MSGs. You know what I mean? Marine security guards. Okay, so you got the 451 is 19 is A, right? Because 45 mod 26 is 19. You just, anything less than 52, you just subtract. 52 or less, you just subtract 26 and it gives you a number between 1 and 26, right? So, or 0 and 25, right? 27 is 1, and 26 is 0, and 52 is 0. So you get to 25 at 51. So let's see what we got here. You end in 86 going to the right. So 86 is 8 plus 6 equals 14 is N is Navy, right? And then it ends in 6, Navy 6. You get that staff section or the SEAL Team 6. Sometimes I call it SEAL Team 6, Navy 6, or DevGru or whatever. DevGru you get a 47, like my birthday, April 7th, which is 4-7, right? It's 4 for D and 7 for G. And 47 mod 26 is 21 is U, which is the underwater. And some of you know my social would add up to 21. So my social is keyed to my birth date, which is underwater, undersea, undercover. And there's unconventional too, but you need a W, right? And let's see what else we got. So you got an SA. That could be special agent. Let's see if we can get a D. Well, we did get a 6 plus 8 is 14. How do you get the D from 14? There's two ways. You can take 1 times 4 is 4, and you get a D out of that. Or 1 and 4, where you separate the 1 from the 4, and you have a 1 for something, and you have a D for something, right? Well, the D is a 4. So you have the 4 for something, which is a D. And then you have SAD, 1914. This is a conversion that takes place where you transform one number into a couple of other numbers or something like that. So we know what SAD is. That's the CIA's Special Activities Division, right? And 51 is the executive agency. And the executive agency is who runs the stations, right? Those are the executives, right? So there's a whole agency that's involved in that, right? The counterintelligence and security, and it's not necessarily all the intelligence analysts, but they have some intelligence analysts, counterintelligence analysts, and they report in back to the director, who's the executive of the agency, right? There's also the president's executive agency that, people say there's OGAs, and they always think that's the CIA, right? It's other government agencies. Well, there's like agencies within agencies. The most prominent of those is like WACA, which is the White House Communications Agency. It's part of DISA, which is the Defense Information Systems Agency. It's an agency within an agency. But WACA's director is not necessarily directly working for DISA, and he doesn't control everything DISA does. He doesn't run all their contracts for all the commands in the Army or something. But if he needs something, he can get it. He has high priority, and he can get anything he needs from DISA, or she. And he kind of works for those White House communications people sometimes, but also for the president and the White House military office, or anybody in the military or government who needs to communicate with the president. So that's kind of the executive agencies, or the executive agencies. So when you say OGA, that's sometimes the CIA and sometimes it's something else. A lot of people in Washington, they work for some government agency. They just say U.S. government. They don't walk around telling people it's the CIA. It's kind of the way they talk, right? And they'll tell you that. They say, the CIA usually just says U.S. government. The NSA, they'll walk around and say they work for the DOD. What's the DOD? There's a bunch of DOD agencies. There's the Pentagon. It could be some colonel at the old guard, And as long as they're all walking around saying the DOD, people are just really confused about who works for what. And that's a good idea to confuse the Russians, the Chinese, and the journalists. Because the only place they really need to get on the record stuff is in the White House briefing room or in the Pentagon briefing room. When some colonel walks down the street in Washington and goes on the record with something, it's not necessarily a Pentagon colonel or even a real colonel. Every colonel can put their uniform on, a former colonel, a retired colonel. And also some Russians know how to put the uniform on, and they're pretty good with the mask. So you could see a guy in the White House briefing room doing something, walk out of there, see him in the street, he'd come up to you and say, look, I got this near-field thing, I want to tap your phone and pass you my number. You can call me back, but I can't talk long. 10 seconds. I got an hour-long conversation I'd like to have with you. He'll walk off, and it won't be him talking to the journalist. Somebody with a really good computer can synthesize his voice and feed him a bunch of fake news, and they'll say, well, he's an official source. I saw him in the White House briefing room. He's not. He's some guy who knows how to put on a mask and a uniform to look like a guy you saw in the White House briefing room. And then he walks off, and he says he's talking to you, but he's not talking to you. He's driving around in a van somewhere with a guy who's got a high-speed cluster computer in the back of the van, who's synthesizing a voice that they're typing into a computer that sounds like the guy you think you know. And so some journalist walks in the New York Times with this tape and a picture from his photojournalist who took the picture at the corner of such and such a street near the Red Line Pentagon subway station, and says, this is who he is, and this is what he said, and this is what he said after we walked out. And the journalist is wired the whole time, so he knows, this is solid, right? It's not solid. It's fake news. It's a sophisticated Russian tradecraft, and you really don't know who you're talking to when you meet someone in the street, a park anymore. They don't want to sit there and talk to you for an hour on camera. They got cell phones and video phones and all kinds of things, and they'll bamboozle you. They can put a cell phone on you and say, okay, here's my number. Call me back. I'll talk to you on video so you know it's me. And then they synthesize the video too. which is fake video, but it looks like the real guy. They could make it look like Colin Powell, Donald Trump, what's her name, the preacher's daughter who was the press secretary. Yeah, Huckabee, Sarah Huckabee. They make it look like whatever they want to make it look like, and they can make it sound like whatever they want to make it look like. But if you're not there actually testing his face to see if you can peel his mask off or melt it with a lighter, you're not going to be able to figure it out. Yeah, you're not. There are people who can do a little forensic analysis of someone's face and determine that's rubber, right? And they're called chemists and physicists. And the CIA knows how to do that. But most journalists are not applying their physical knowledge to determine whether somebody is wearing a mask. You know, that's counterintelligence's role at CIA. And there are some agency officers these days who understand that kind of thing, and they need to be trained, or, you know, there's older officers who need to upgrade their skill set. They already understand engineering and physics and all that. Well, the disguised tradecraft has got a lot more complicated. People use 3D printers and things to print out things that they could never print before. I read on a ship they can print out a part now for, I don't know what they use the part for, but you have 3D printers and they're going to print out a barracks made out of concrete, you know, so a mask is not going to be a problem. They shoot a picture of your face with the camera and some lasers. The lasers will make the image much better than a camera, because the lasers detect the exact dimensions that they need and can map it with 3 dimensions. And once they have that, you're a digital image in some guy's spy computer, and they'll print out whatever they want.